Welcome to Project Vanguard podcast, home of the community of veterans in energy, where we explore the journeys of veterans leading in energy. We're building American energy dominance through an all-the-above approach, where energy security is national security, and helping fellow veterans to join the clean energy workforce. I'm your host, Kevin Doffing. Today's guest is Barrett Thomas, a retired Army infantry officer who now develops wind, solar, and battery projects across Texas and Oklahoma with Apex Clean Energy. After 20 years in uniform, including a command at Fort Cavazos, Barrett made a decisive pivot in his career, joining Apex through a Hiring Our Heroes fellowship and finding his next mission in the energy sector. Since then, he's been helping farmers keep their land in production, advocating at the Texas Capitol, and navigating the very real policy battles shaping the future of American energy. From lease negotiations and local politics to federal tariffs and transmission, Barrett's boots on the ground work is what the energy transition actually looks like. In this episode, we talk about how he found his way into clean energy, why landowner rights and rural economics are central to this fight, and what veterans bring to the table when it comes to trust, toughness, and team building. If you're trying to make sense of how national policy hits local soil, or wondering how to turn your military experience into real-world impact, this one's for you. Let's get into it. Barrett, thank you so much for joining us today. I can't wait to really talk to you about your journey into this space. We talked a long time ago before you moved into this space when you were still evaluating. I think you've done a really good job, more so than a lot of people I've seen, on intentionally breaking into this industry. Where were you when you decided, hey, I want to be in this industry? And what kind of made that happen for you?
Yeah, I was a battalion commander at Fort Cavazos, Texas. And, we're at that 20-year mark, which is a big decision for folks. Do we stay in? Do we go out? If we stayed in, we knew it was going to be lots of moves, the Army, there's a lot of moving involved. And so as a family, we made the decision, okay, we are going to get out and we're going to live in Austin, Texas. And where I was at in my career, I said, I really don't want to do the defense stuff. If I'm going to get out, this is an opportunity to try something new. And the Army had provided me the opportunity back in 2010 to get my master's degree in environmental engineering when I went and taught at West Point. And so I said, I want to do something that leverages that degree, something in the environmental engineering or renewable energy space. So I started, LinkedIn, different schools, LinkedIn Army, LinkedIn military, renewable energy. And then I started linking up with folks and just having conversations with people like you. You were one of my first calls about, hey, I don't know what I want to do, but this renewable energy stuff sounds cool and I want to try it out. So, should I go work for Tesla? Should I go do solar panels? I just had no idea what I could do in the industry. And those calls with people were very helpful. And that led me to a call with Apex, with some of the people there, with other industries. And that's how I got in the business.
Right. So fast track, where are you today?
Yeah, so now I live in Austin, Texas. I am a renewable energy developer for Apex Clean Energy. I do solar projects, utility scale. So we're talking typically 200 megawatt plus on the solar side, 300 megawatt plus on the wind side is what we're going for projects. I do some solar and wind in Texas and in Oklahoma. So the ERCOT and SPP markets is kind of my sweet spot. We do battery storage also and a little bit of the new developing energy storage, data centers, and it's a great, great deal.
Well, and I'd also say, we're a week out at the time of this recording from the end of the Texas legislative session, and you've been really involved in that. Insofar as even going and dropping a card for us. Hey, what is that? And what has that been like for you?
Yeah, and one thing I like about this industry is I'm quite passionate about it because I believe in it. I do believe that renewable energy is linked to national security, and we need an all-the-above energy solution to get our country, our state, where we need to be with the increase in demands that's coming. So, yeah, in terms of involvement with the ledge, I got, you have been very helpful in standing up the Project Vanguard that gives us the opportunity to speak out and say, hey, this is important. This is not just a tree hugger type deal. Yes, I do love the environment. I'm a fisher, I'm a hunter, I'm a fisherman, I'm a hunter. I enjoy all that. But
Well, that's
uh,
because you sound like a coastal elite. I mean, like, listen to that accent. I mean, I can't tell if
yeah,
it's Boston or if it's, you know.
yeah, people have trouble differentiating which part of the Northeast that is. Um, but yeah, so, I wanted to get involved. And so through the Project Vanguard, you were able to pull us together. We went and had a legislative day.
Hmm.
And then, in terms of dropping a card, what that is basically having the opportunity to represent the industry, to represent Project Vanguard, but also myself, and say, hey, this bill is either bad or it's a good bill and we support it for the industry. And so you got to go up to the Capitol, you log on a computer, and you just say, I am for or against this bill. You drop it and you've logged your position. And then it lets our elected representatives know that, hey, there's veterans who care about this issue
Hmm.
and they either support it or they don't. And so I think it's really important to do. It's worth the time, it's worth the drive, it's worth the trip. And then if needed, it's worth the time to testify and sit in the Capitol all day, as we did together for one of the recent Senate bills that was going through the ledge.
One of the things I think was really powerful, I love that we had those veterans out there testifying, you, Michelle, everybody. Talk about also the landowner component. Like, I found that to be like a really powerful thing. And that might just be because I've grown up in Texas and I'm conservative. And so land rights matter to me. I mean, I'm noticing that doesn't apply to the people that are trying to pass these bills, but property rights are a pretty big deal, and the landowners seem to be the best group to talk about that. And I love that one guy you introduced me to at lunch that testified.
Yeah, I think the landowner component is so important because if you're not familiar with the business, you see it as one or the other. It's like they are taking this land out of agricultural production. I grew up working in the rice fields from the time I was seventh grader until I graduated high school. My cousins and uncles still work in the rice fields, still have, they're
Typical tree
farmers.
huggers, typical tree huggers out there working the land.
Yeah, I mean, but it's not a this or that,
Right.
you can have, especially wind is you can have landowners where it allows them to keep that land in production. It allows them to keep farming it. It allows them to
Hmm.
keep ranching it
Keep
because
drilling it.
keep drilling it. Yes, that's exactly right. It allows them to do everything, and it's an additional income, a drought resistant income that they
Hmm.
can guarantee on, because unlike oil and gas, which is always tied to royalty payments and prices, oftentimes in the renewable energy business, that's a fixed rate that these landowners and farmers and ranchers are getting to supplement their income. And, maybe they've got 5,000 acres, 500 acres, 10 acres. They can put some of their land in solar or some of it in wind production, and it gives them that blended revenue stream that they need to keep their ranching and their way of life and their farming. And so, yeah, I think the landowners who have done that, the farmers and ranchers, they understand how it can be supplemental. It is not okay, I'm now a solar farmer and that's it, it's all out. Some do, and it's
Yeah.
fine. And Texas laws make it to where even if it seems like it's forever, the truth is our state laws require when that thing is done, the solar project or wind, there's a bond that has to have that removed. So, some of the problems we saw in the early days just don't exist anymore.
Well, I feel like those bonds are just aggressively priced. So, I mean, like, there's the actual money to do it. Whereas, like, I've talked to people on some of the P&A work, the plug and abandon work that goes on in some of the natural gas or, oil wells. There's not enough money on those bonds to really sufficiently do those, especially when like one well can easily balloon up to like $2 million to P&A instead of like 10 grand.
Right.
So it's interesting that we have like this differing level, but I remember when we were testifying, somebody asked about greenfielding or decommissioning, and nobody talked about the bonding. And I was like, man, why is nobody talking about this? I wish I was up at there and I could just grab the mic and been like, let's get somebody who actually knows this.
Yeah.
How do y'all figure that out?
So typically the way it works, it is written in the lease negotiations, but also the state law requires. Now, I'm not an expert on this, upfront caveat, but it's a third party that comes in and a professional engineer that says, how much is it going to cost to take it down and get it off to be recycled? It's evaluated by a third party. So not by the renewable energy company, not by the landowner. Third party neutral comes in and does that assessment. And then we have to maintain that bond to do the land restoration, which very frequently is things like removing the wind turbines, taking the foundation down 3 feet below grade, pulling up the cables 3 feet below grade. So to where it's pretty much back to the way it was. Same with the solar, right? So yes, the ground's resting in solar for 30 years or 40 years or 50 years if it's producing energy that long, but then it can go right back into production. Unlike subdivisions and shopping centers and ranchettes, that changes the landscape forever for all intensive purposes, for our lifetimes beyond. This actually does not.
Yeah, I've always heard whenever you pave or do whatever, the concrete becomes the last crop you ever plant there.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Whereas in this case, we're going to put some concrete in the ground, but it's going to be removed down to 3 feet, which still allows you to take it right back into farming.
Yeah. To the point of the recycling, it's not a done deal, but I'm pretty sure it's not going to hit any major hiccups. But Representative Lambert has, a really good recycling requirement bill, which I was telling somebody and they're like, oh, that must raise costs or, it's going to be bad for the industry. I'm like, I mean, everyone I know wants it, right? Like that's where government regulation is good is when it sets a stable, level playing field for the industry and it takes into account these kinds of things like, hey, we don't want these elephant graveyards of wind blades sitting in Sweetwater, right? There was a
Right.
bad company that did this. Lambert's up around there and he gets it. And this is not an anti-industry thing. This is a pro-community. Let's keep this, but let's elevate the playing field on which we operate.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. It's good. Like I said, it's good legislation. It's something we need to address within the industry, and it's getting better. It's just those are problems you don't see. It's still a baby industry, it's new. So these things are just starting to be decommissioned. It's like, oh yeah, we need to address that and make sure that we can recycle it and bring that land back to the way it was.
Well, when you talk about like the baby industry, that was the thing I always felt like, I only got in the industry 5 or 6 years ago. And when I was getting in, I just felt like every month I wasn't getting in, I was 3 to 5 months out because of the speed at which the industry was growing. And it just continues to do that. And that's why whenever I talk to veterans, and even back when I'm sure we talked, it's a great point to get in. You just got to find your foothold. And that's kind of where we want to use Project Vanguard to use folks like you that have already made this inroad and kind of beat brush to create a bigger path that turns into a trail, that turns into a road, that turns into, high speed access for veterans to get in more consistently, more effectively. How have you seen your process from when you were trying to figure it out, talking to knuckleheads like me, to now when you get the call, "Hey, I'm interested. What do I do?" How has that shifted from when you were trying to get into advice you give now?
I think there are just more groups getting out there. Like I said, your group's a great example. It's like, hey, I'm a veteran. I want to get into renewable energy, or how could I? That just really wasn't there. Even 2 years ago when I started, and I started looking into the industry probably, 3 years ago. And it just really didn't exist what that pathway was. But I think even in the Army now, they had a program where you can become a wind technician. And so as they're doing their, soldiers getting out of the Army can do that skill bridge program to give them 3 to 6 months of upskilling before they get out to become a wind technician. I did not do that. No, I did a similar program. I did the Hiring Our Heroes U.S. Chamber of Commerce program. It's about 3 to 4 months. While I was still in the Army, I was able to work for the company I work for now, Apex. And so it allows me to, one, get upskilled as a veteran who had been an infantry officer for 20 years. I'm able to learn about the business, the lexicon, how things work. Apex can kind of take me for a test drive. I take the company for a test drive and then decide if it's a good fit. They hire me, which they did, and it's great. But even if not, now I've got 3, 4 months of experience, in my case, as a renewable energy developer. And then that allows me the credentials to at least be more marketable rather than, a knuckle dragging infantry officer who just, now, hey, I want to start building wind projects.
Knuckle dragging. But by the way, what was your commissioning source, Barrett?
West Point. It was
Oh,
West Point. Yeah.
yeah. I've heard of that little
They
place.
sometimes they let folks slide in.
Well, and I hear that
Uh,
it's also a good place to meet your spouse. Is that right?
That's right. My wife is also a West Point graduate. She was 1 year behind me, and we didn't date till I was a junior, well beyond any. But yes, that's correct. So yeah, she was in the Army 5 years also.
You told me that they have rules there. What did you call it? Like,
There's very specific rules on, dating at West Point. I don't know. Everything is strictly off limits. You know what I mean? The door
yeah,
has to be open all the time. Anytime you're hanging out together, when we go on our cadet dates, our cadates,
cadates. That's what you called it.
yeah, the cadates, it involved hanging out in the barracks room with the door open, eating a little bit of ice cream, watching friends, playing some Tetris, and that was about it. You know what I mean? We weren't going out partying or having a good time, that's for sure. That was very rare as we got older. We could eventually, but it was just a lot less when you're at a service academy compared to regular college.
Oh, that's hilarious. Okay, so what was your title when you were doing your internship with Apex?
I was a project developer.
Okay, so we've set up a project management skill bridge through American Clean Power. So that means that it's accessible to all the employers. So if employers are listening to this and you'd like to access that, you can just reach out to me and we can help you get set up on that. So you don't have to create your own MOU or memorandum of understanding with the Department of Defense. We've already done that as an ACP member. That's a benefit you have. And then for veterans that are interested in those programs, there's the program that I just referenced that we're running through ACP for project managers, but other folks, there's some great programs at Vestas, at Apex, a lot of other folks. And so the way that these work is they're just kind of hanging out there, right? So like, how did you find out about the Apex internship?
Well, like I said, there really wasn't one. I was just, again, I'm, LinkedIn searching for people. And so I'm searching Renewable Energy Army, Renewable Energy University of Texas, Renewable Energy West Point. And I end up getting linked up with my current VP now of development here in Texas, and then the chief operating officer there at Apex. And so, I had those conversations and they're like, oh yeah, so you'll come work for us for free for 4 months, 3 to 4 months. And I can't guarantee we're going to hire you, but yeah, we'll let you come work for us for free for a couple months. Absolutely.
You can come hang out.
Yeah, you can come hang out for sure. And, I looked at it as a long job interview. So I was like, all right, well, I'm here. I'm going to show them the value I can bring to the organization and really get after it and learn. I knew there was not a guarantee of a job, but I was certainly determined to learn as much as I could. So yeah, these are really good programs for our exiting service members. And they're also great programs, for the renewable energy companies, because both are important, getting our veterans upskilled so that they have a good glide path out of the Army, because there's many soldiers and officers who come in, they're just not sure what they want to do. And so they join the military, and it's a great start. Now they've got this discipline, they've got this work ethos, and they make fine employees at these organizations.
So when you found the role, was it on the Apex website? Was it on the Hiring Our Heroes website?
There was not really a role. Apex was hiring a couple, but there wasn't like specifically a role at the time. So because I was here in Texas, Apex was going to did allow me to work on that Texas development team to get the experience. And then it turned out one of the individuals who was on the team had to move up to the headquarters in Charlottesville. And so a job position did open up. And so I was quite fortunate. Apex is we're kind of the big boys. It's a big size organization, but there are some that are much, much larger out there. And so they have maybe more capacity to hire folks on it can just, the smaller the organization, sometimes it can be harder. There's not as much people just moving in and out based on the numbers.
Yeah. Now go back to when you were coming in, the COO, now CEO. I assume you're talking about Ken.
That's correct. Ken Young. Yep.
Yeah. Also a West Pointer.
He is. Yes. Yeah.
And also has joined the advisory board for Project Vanguard, which we're very appreciative of.
That's awesome. Yeah.
So what has it been like working for Ken?
Fantastic. The culture of Apex is just phenomenal. The values that we have there, integrity, professionalism, entrepreneurship, sustainability, all the values, there's 5 core values. And the whole organization lives by that. I mean, it is a group of professionals that are truly dedicated to their work and the mission, which is accelerating the shift to clean energy. The employees are all behind that. And he certainly inspires that culture. Before him, the CEO was also a naval veteran. And he also, inspired that same sense of purpose, mission-driven work that folks like to get behind. Ask anybody, what are they doing at Apex? We're accelerating the shift to clean energy. We're getting after it.
And at one point, didn't you think about going in the Navy because of your grandfather?
Yeah, I sure did. Navy was first choice. My grandfather was in the Navy. I had visions. I loved to fish, as I've said earlier. And so I had visions of me throwing a big old line, an offshore line off the back of an aircraft carrier, reeling in big old sailfish and whatnot. But, as I went through the nomination process and started looking more into it, first I applied to the Naval Academy because I was going to be an underwater welder, because I loved welding and I liked scuba diving. And so that got me to the Navy. And then as I went through the application process, by the time I was done, I was like, you know what? I'd just like to be in the military writ large. And when I went to the nomination panel, that's how they did it here. It was Ron Paul who ended up nominating me. And they've got a board. And, they said, well, hey, your grades aren't quite good enough to get into the Navy. Your eyes aren't good enough, so you probably can't get in the Air Force. But we could probably find a place for you at West Point if you want to go in the Army. And I was like, yeah, sure. At that point, I was like, okay, let's do it. And, it worked out great because the truth is I loved my job in the Army, being an infantry officer, walking around on the ground, the camaraderie, the soldier interaction. I loved every bit of my 20 years that I served in the Army. I would not be as happy on a boat, I'm quite certain. So, things work out for a reason.
I don't think they're going to let you fish either. I'm going to be honest with you.
Yeah, I don't think so. In hindsight, it's like, they're not going to let me drop a line off of that. No way. No way. And who's going to net it for me? I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, no kidding. Unless you're going to go pick up some of those fighter jets that fell off in, the Red Sea.
Oh, man, no comment. No comment. I'm going to go back to my...
You can tell you worked on staff.
Yeah.
You got the polish.
Yeah. Sometimes you learn when to just be quiet.
There you go. Better discretion, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's
Better
right.
part of valor. But didn't you say like your dad had a completely different job than being in the infantry, which is really about managing and inflicting violence?
Yeah, 100%. Both my grandfather and my father were family physicians in my hometown of Eagle Lake, Texas. And so they used to run the Thomas Family Clinic. And so the truth is, when I was in high school, I had no idea what I wanted to be, but I knew I did not want to be a doctor because I saw every Christmas, Thanksgiving, Easter, whatever the holiday was, one of those two was always on call, delivering babies at 2 a.m, out to emergency room. I mean, they were nonstop, missing things, always up in the middle of the night. And so then I end up choosing a profession being an infantry officer where I am up at all hours of the night, gone for multiple months at a time on deployments or training exercises, getting calls in the middle of the night because soldiers are doing some stuff maybe they should not have been doing. So, all the things I saw, the reason I didn't want to be a doctor, follow the family path, if you will, they all came to fruition anyway as an infantry officer.
Yeah. Yeah. I always say, be careful when you say never. Never.
Right.
Never has a good way of coming back on you.
That is a fact. Yes.
Well, so what are you working on these days? Kind of give me your sit rep from the field. What's keeping you busy these days?
Our bread and butter are developing wind projects, developing solar projects, and oftentimes we tie a storage component to that project. And so that's still it. I have 2 projects I'm working in Oklahoma, 2 wind projects up there in the 250, 300 megawatt size range. Oklahoma legislature's been pretty tough this year also. I think there's that fight, but on the property rights side, as you were talking about. And the same fight is occurring in Oklahoma that we saw in Texas now. So my bread and butter is going out and still securing wind, developing those wind projects, getting the leases all signed, tying all the land together, starting the studies, the environmental studies, getting all the aerial mapping and starting the design of how we can build that wind farm, which I love all the pieces of that. I like everything from in a brand new project where I get to go out and meet with this farmer or rancher and talk to them about the opportunity to have wind or solar on their farm, to working with the environmental folks to doing the studies, and then also to working with the design team to figuring out where are we going to place turbines, where are we going to place panels, where are we going to put wires and connectors and transmission lines to make this thing work. I like all the facets of it. So that's what I'm still doing day to day, is building these projects from, hey, it's a good idea on a desktop, to everything in between until we break ground, really. Once we start to break ground is the for sure when I'm handing the majority of it over to a project management team that's going to build it. But I'm doing 2 wind projects in Oklahoma, 1 solar project in Texas, and both looking quite good.
So I think the big bill that everyone was worried about, Oklahoma got beat. We're still a week out in Texas. So I think as of this weekend, the worst bills we were worried about aren't going to come up for a vote, but they could always, like a zombie come back from the dead as an amendment to like something in biotech. Who knows, right? So until it's done, we don't know. Hopefully when you're listening to this, there's been no upheavals. But in your opinion, what can we do between now and the next legislative session in Texas or Oklahoma to really have a bulwark against some of these punitive bills that have no basis in reality?
Yeah, I really think it comes down to education. What I've found 9 times out of 10 when I'm talking to landowners, when I'm talking to county judges, state legislators, other officials, it comes down to education. And so if we can have conversations with those lawmakers on what the renewable energy business is bringing, it is bringing tax dollars, a large benefit to these communities that oftentimes aren't going to get it. Like even these small towns where we can do wind energy, where we can do solar. There's a project that I'm working on in Oklahoma, and it'll bring over, close to $30 million over the life of the project to the county, to the schools. And that's real money that they can use for their roads, for their, it goes to some to the landowners, to the schools. It can be a huge boon to these areas. It's tough to get economic development
Right.
in those small towns now. It's all going to the major cities. And so this is a type of development that is super beneficial to them. But there's all these misnomers and false information out there. They're non-truths about the industry that have scared people. So I think if we can get real peer-reviewed knowledge and papers and just discussions about things that the lawmakers and the citizens are concerned with, and let the facts speak for themselves. I think the education is just such a big key, because the one thing that people always come to me that I can't do anything about is they don't like the way a wind turbine looks. I cannot change it. If I could, and Kevin, you were in the Army, I was in the Army. I've said this many times. If it were up to me, I would spray paint them camouflage and make them blend into the background. But the FAA has a serious problem with that, and they got to be white. That's it. I can't do it. But, that's the one thing that folks, and I think that's just, over time, perhaps, that goes away. You see water towers, we got cell phone towers. So that's the one thing that a lot of folks really do get caught up on. And that's just something that, okay, that is a bit, you don't like the way they look necessarily, but look at all the good it can do for the community.
Right.
Look at all the good it can do for providing energy that we need at a real low cost. It's so cost effective. Wind and solar are the cheapest forms of energy, full stop. Levelized cost of energy. Take all the subsidies away.
And fastest to deploy.
Fastest to deploy, cheapest. Nothing comes close.
Right.
That's just the truth. The Lazard's reports, people are investing in this because of that.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you see, this is one of the things I've always thought is like, we've had this crashing price, the LCOE on crashing in a good way, like coming down. So it's more cost competitive on solar and everything else. I wouldn't be surprised if it ticked up a little bit, just as like it stopped being solar naked on the grid, right? Like when you were sub 20% of the grid mix, that's fine. Just throw the power out there. We can use it at some point. But as it becomes a bigger thing, when you start firming it up, and I just see solar plus storage or wind plus storage just becoming not like a term, but just wind and solar don't go naked on the grid anymore. And solar is just a baked in thing. You might have standalone storage, but 10 years you don't have standalone wind or solar. Do you see that, or is that just, am I off base?
I'm not sure that when the wind peaks and providing power is different and it pairs quite well with the solar. I don't know that it is necessarily we have to have a storage every time we have a solar or a wind paired next to it. And this is not my level of expertise. Again, full caveat here. But I think the true power is going to come in an interconnected grid with a good transmission system, where I can pull power. So the wind's not blowing today in Eagle Lake, Texas, but it is blowing out in West Texas. Let's pull that here. And West Texas has excess capacity, or vice versa. It's a calm day out west. We need to pull that power from the east. The transmission is really, now that's just one of my thoughts there.
No. If you ever look at like a price map in Texas, you'll see it's maxed out at $5,000 per megawatt and 99% of ERCOT, except Corpus Christi, where they have a lot of good nearshore coastal wind coming in the day, and they have negative pricing. Like, map will be bright sun red, flaming lava red and all the state, and then a deep blue where the pricing is negative, on this heat map. Why can't we spread that around?
Right. Yeah, the transmission is critical. That's why I know we've got some new, Permian Basin lines coming on. I think PUC decided to go with the big lines. It's going to be helpful because we just need it. We got to be able to move the power around. The demand for power is only going up. How much? There's a lot of different numbers there, but with these data centers and artificial intelligence, it's going up. We need all of it.
So by the time this comes up, I'm sure things will change. I mean, tariffs seem to change at the speed of tweets. So what happens, the current House bill came out, they're basically gutting the IRA, right? They've got certain provisions in there that don't necessarily gut it immediately, but the way they have the foreign entities of concern, the FEOCs and all these other things, it basically just like terminates it in the next like 60 days. How much of that is concerning to you with your role, and what would that, if it was fully enacted the way it is, impact what's happening in your world? Like, give me your mission debrief on that.
For us, it's tough when things are not predictable, right? So like when it's changing, it's affecting our capital. How much are we going to have to spend to build the facility, the solar field, the wind farm? And so if we have to tack on to this project, a 20% increase in panel cost or a 40% increase in these components, the capital expenditure goes up, the cost goes up, all the power prices are, just everything goes up. So it does make a difference for sure. Now it's going to affect a lot of people, and so everybody's going to have this same challenge, but it's just very hard for predictability on how can we lock in the prices? And again, that's kind of the things I think about. Is just, it just makes it tough because we don't know. Well, these are the returns we're shooting for. Can we achieve those returns if this tariff may come or it might not? It just makes it real hard, and it forces you sometimes into decisions that you have to make now.
Yeah.
So I can at least lock in that price, so I can remove that risk, that uncertainty, and make it a fact.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. So, Barrett, I love having you on here and kind of talking about it, but you're still within the first, couple of years of moving into this industry. What's your advice for folks that are on your heels coming into the industry? Vets that are looking at this or employers that are looking to hire vets?
So first, I'd like to talk to employers looking to hire vets. I think the average veteran coming out of whatever service is not going to necessarily know the difference between a megawatt and a kilowatt, and they're not going to know what net capacity factor is and how much solar irradiance a panel can receive. But they will learn. And, most of our veterans are very good at picking up new skills in whatever service. Very frequently, you're having to go from job to job to job. You're learning new things, but they have the foundational skills. And it's not everybody. There's some veterans out there, shoot. But
Are you saying we let knuckleheads into the military?
we let
I was in
plenty
the
of 'em in.
infantry. I never saw anybody
we
like
let
that.
oh yeah, when you're in command positions is when you really get to know the knuckleheads, but they're such a small percentage. It's half of a half a percent. The majority have learned that good work ethic. They've learned how to adapt. They've learned how to do things when it's hard, when there's no sleep, when it's cold, when there's no food. They're tough, they're resilient, and they will work and they will learn, and they can be great employees, but they're not going to have the 3-4 years experience or maybe whatever you're looking for in that job. But what I'd say is oftentimes, more often than not, it is worth the investment and the time to train them up and leverage those skills that they have. So that's what I'd say to the employers, people looking.
And
to
I would
hire
add on,
vets.
you probably have veterans at your company. I would start by talking to them and integrating them into your hiring process.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, as you and I have said before, Kevin, veterans represent almost 10% of the renewable energy business. Veterans enjoy this kind of work, this purpose-driven work. So that's what I'd say to the employers. Yes, go out and find them, the veterans who would be a good fit. And then to the veterans looking to get into the business, it can be tough going from something that you just don't know a lot about. And so the tools that we have, such as Project Vanguard, such as others that are out there where you can go on LinkedIn and just start searching veteran renewable energy or Army renewable energy, Marine Corps renewable energy, start finding people. Anytime someone asks me for 15 minutes of time to talk renewable energy and they're a veteran, I never turn them down. I'm always willing to talk. Now, I can't promise you a job. I can't promise you to even give you a recommendation because I may not know you from Adam or Eve, but I can absolutely offer my time to help you navigate through what things you might want to do in this business, because there's a lot of opportunity out there, and finding which one you want is just, it's up to the individual. But so that's what I'd say there.
Yeah, no, I always try and say, like, Project Vanguard's goal is not to get you a job. We're there to get you a screening call and help you find a network, right? So, like, you want to interview with Apex? Okay, well, I can introduce you to Barrett. If he likes you, he can put in a good word, but that's not a job. You will get through the clutter and the noise and the endless black hole that is like just applying online without knowing anyone at a company. But once you get that first call, it's on you. But come back to us, like you said, hey, people keep talking about kilowatts and then they say megawatt. Am I mishearing them, or am I drunk? What is happening?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. You got to go out there and get it.
Those are the questions you ask outside of the chain of command.
That's right. That's right. Exactly.
No, man. Well, hey, love the perspective. Love the work you're doing at Apex. I'm going to close out with the same question I probably asked you years ago when we first talked. What do you want to do when you grow up?
Man, I do not yet know what I want to do when I grow up, but I can tell you I'm having a darn good time with what I'm doing right now in renewable energy and developing projects with Apex. I have fun at my work, and it is a good place to work. So where I'm gonna be in 5 or 10 years, that's the thing about the Army. It's super easy. Well, yeah, I want to be a chief of staff of the Army someday, of course. Be a brigade commander. Um, it's not necessarily as clean out here in the old civilian world. So what I can tell you is I'm loving what I'm doing, and renewable energy, I 100% believe in it, and I'm proud to be accelerating the shift to clean energy here with Apex. It's a good deal.
That's awesome, man. Well, thanks for making the time today. Barrett Thomas with Apex Clean Energy. What are you going to be doing the rest of this week, man?
Developing projects, trying to get them built. I want to see wind turbines spinning. I want to see solar arrays collecting. That's it.
That's awesome, man. I love it. I love the dedication. You stay on point.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it.
All right, man. Well, thanks for coming out today. And, I'll see you soon next time I'm in Austin.
Okay. Sounds great. Thank you, Kevin. Take care.
All right, Barrett.
Appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks for tuning in to the Project Vanguard podcast. If this episode sparked something for you, share it with someone who's ready to think differently, whether it's about an all-the-above energy approach, how energy security is national security, or the veteran workforce in our industry. If you believe what we're building, a quick review goes a long way. You can do that wherever you get your podcasts. And until next time, keep up the fire.